Hey everybody, this is Brandon, and I just wanted to pop in before the show actually starts today to let you know that we had a little bit of trouble with our audio this time around. Plus, Peter is no longer editing for us, and so we're figuring out some of the new steps in editing, and there might be a few little quirks here and there, but we're getting the kinks worked out. Thank you for sticking with us. I also wanted to let you know that we have our next workshop, Learning to Trust God, a 60-minute breakthrough workshop that starts on September 11th, and we have one each month throughout the year. I would love it if you came to one of our workshops. They're exactly what you need during this busy time of life. I'll teach you a simple prayer practice that can help you trust God and let go of some of those fears. I also wanted to let you know that in October is our first 4-week intensive. It's called Heal and Deepen Your Relationship with God, and we do exactly that. We take the whole month to slowly unpack what it is that prevents us from trusting God. And then we get to know God as he is revealed in Christ Jesus in his word as the God of love and compassion, and practice a way of life, a trellis of grace we're calling it, but it's a rule of life that helps us continue taking our soul questions to Jesus and letting him answer them through his grace throughout the rest of our lives. So I would love it if you joined us for an intensive. It'll change your life. So enjoy the show. Check out our events at signpostinn.org/events. Welcome to the Signpost Inn Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Brandon Booth, and I'm really glad you're here. This is the show where we explore what practical Christian faith looks like when we start with God's grace instead of our performance. And we're going to help you cut through the BS, lift your gaze from the chaos of life, and attend to Jesus as he's revealed in his word. Today, we're doing something different. We've tossed out the outline. We have kept our coffee. We are just going to hit record, and we are going to freestyle a little bit today. This is Signpost Inn Unscripted. And that's because there were sort of monkey wrenches have been thrown into our lives from every direction. First, poor Matt is not able to be with us today because he is at a family funeral, which is sad. Matt, we love you. We're sorry you're not here. This is also Peter's last episode with us before he moves on to his new job as a pastor in Maryland. And we're going to miss you, Peter, but we wanted to have one last shot, one last time with you. So today I've got Peter and Leave, my wife, and we are going to just sort of toss out some questions and see where the things go. There's not much of a script here and not much of a singular idea, but I think it could be a lot of fun. So anyway, Peter, hello. Leave, hello. Good to have you guys with me on the back porch.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here, even if it's my last time. It's always it's a hoot to hang out with you guys and talk, so I like being here.
I'm interested to see what comes up. Let's go.
Yeah. The Signpost Inn Unscripted, that should be like, you should have like every month, there's just an unscripted one, and that'd be fun.
Do we do it like a reality television show where we just sort of like sit in the confessional booth and talk about how like Peter really annoyed me in the office last week because he was so loud? Okay, I tell you, last week.
I think we have to decide whether we're voting him off or, if he's following a divine call, if we're like, off the island, man.
There you go.
Do you get voted off the island for becoming
I don't know how that works. I don't know.
Yikes, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Peter, maybe this was a terrible idea. Maybe we should have kept our script. Now, truth be told, we never really have much of a script. We have questions, but anyway, this is totally off the rails today. So hopefully it's enjoyable. All right. So we all agreed on a couple of different like open-ended questions to get us started with, and we'll see where things go. Let me start easy. What's something you've been working on lately? What's a topic, an idea? What's something that's been interesting to you lately? This could be anything, of course. Yeah, what's up?
So we've got one car right now, and I've been walking in here to the office a lot more often, which has been nice. But outside of this last week, that's been nice and cool. It's been really hot, and the Colorado sun is just, it can feel hateful. At times when you're just like, it's bearing down on you and you're like, it's trying to melt me, and so I was walking to work one day and just was getting halfway through and just like, this was a mistake. Like, I'm dying. It's trying to murder me. And a thought, this sort of kind of stream of consciousness was just pinging around in my brain where the phrase from scripture about God being our shelter, right, was coming to mind in terms of, okay, I'm experiencing like some physical, like, man, I wish I had shelter. I wish I had shade. This is unbearable. This is uncomfortable, this environment being out in the heat of the day. But then I was sort of thinking about that as like sort of a metaphor for living life in like the spiritual life often feels like a hostile environment. Like where, right, we were talking about our soul is asking these questions. Am I lovable? Am I enough? Am I worthy of anybody's time? Right. And oftentimes like the environment that we're surrounded in spiritually just feels like it's oppressive. Like the answers to all of that is just this hateful sun bearing down on us with just oppression. And it's like, where can I go for relief? Where can I possibly find any rest spiritually? And so I don't know. I got into the office and I pulled out my little notebook and was jotting down some like thoughts about that. But yeah, like the condemnation and confusion abound in the spiritual environment unless we can find shelter. We'll soon die. And so the questions are like, where can I actually find shelter? And then sort of particularly like, what are the questions that like, for me, there are plenty of ways of like looking at who God is in relation to who I am. But the question of where can I find a gracious God is sort of that distinctive question. From a Lutheran background, we tend to ask that question as opposed to some other theological questions as like one of the main front runners. And to me, that was like clicking that day of like, yeah, like there are other really important questions, but the heart says, where can I find shelter? Where can I find someone who's going to be gracious to me and welcome me in and give me a drink in the shade and give me rest? And so that question of where can I find a gracious God is just, and that correlating to the, some of the expressions in the Psalms of God being our shelter. We're sheltered in the shadow of his wings, and just kind of that, and that too, how God sees our plight as sojourners in the desert under the hot sun, and his heart is to provide shelter. He is gracious as revealed in Christ Jesus. And so I don't know that I like that image. It was a very physical, tangible experience of just like, oh man, like shelter. And I was recalling back, I still camping and outdoorsy stuff, but I grew up and I was pocket knives and I wanted to make things in the woods all the time. And so I had like my survival manual thing, and it was like shelter's the number one priority. Like you've got to be protected from the elements, right? Or else you'll die, like literally. And so it was just sort of like spiritually correlating that as well. It's like, I can know all sorts of true things about God, but unless he is my shelter, he is that gracious space, forgiveness and mercy, that nothing else really matters because I'm going to die before it's relevant. So that's what I've been chewing on recently.
Wow. Let's go deep fast, man. Let's like jump right into it. That's good.
So good.
The Lieb calls the sun the eye of Sauron.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I like those early morning hours until the eye arises. Like you get this nice gray light and then kind of pink, and then it's like, and then for the rest of the day, you're just in this like radiation chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Peter, that's so great. I mean, I'm going to chew on this for a long time too. I've been dealing with a lot of bad feels, and I kind of get stuck on like, what's the psychological reason, or what is my surroundings that are causing these bad feels or whatever. And the idea that like, I don't know, I mean, I'm going to be a little complimentary here, but there's just like such a beautiful childlike humility, Peter, in you saying, look, here's the reality. I want a gracious God. I'm going to pass off on my bad feelings on all kinds of other things and not assume that actually what I want is a gracious God. I'll go through all the layers before I actually admit that what I'm asking for is shelter, protection. I just need something to protect me. And that's hitting me really hard right now, actually, that, rather than just sitting there being like, this is burning me up, this thing hurts, I feel, attacked in general or something, but then turning it to what do I want? And that really just gets me. I want a gracious God. Where can I find one? And that shelter's the number one priority. But then, you go into the Psalms and he calls himself that constantly. the shelter, the protector, and tells us that before we even knew that that's what we needed. We don't necessarily even need like comfort and better feelings as much as we need an objective defender. Anyway, yeah, it's really getting me. Thanks, Peter.
You guys, okay, I'm going to take this slightly left turn maybe, but I've been thinking a little bit lately on this topic, adjacent, I suppose, but I've been curious about the people who, at least externally, don't seem to need this shelter, right? Like I'm trying to make sense out of how this is connected, why I'm thinking of this right now. I guess the way to say it is just, I've been reading things about society and culture and like, especially the need for adventure, the need for there to be demands on our lives. And there's a reaction right now against the sort of therapeutic, comfy stuff, right? So like, if everything is always about kind of comforting and kindness and safety and safe spaces, then there's a dialogue around that about how young people especially, but all of us sort of lose the adventure and the excitement and the call on our lives to do something that's dangerous and important. And like, like I said, this sounds like it's out of left field. I think that's really important, and I think that's something to talk about too. We don't tend to talk about it that much that way. We sort of like, we tend to put that in the law category where it's going to be like, if there's a demand on your life to make something of yourself and stand up and do things, then that's just going to ultimately damn you. And so we sort of, I think, tend to talk to people who are on the exhausted side of demanding. Like they're like, they've been exhausted by having so many demands on their life. Okay, so this is where this is going. I'm not sure I had a real good question to start with, but this is where my thoughts were. It seems to me that there are people, maybe it's stages of life, maybe it's different personalities, that need the demanding side, that need the adventure, that need the call to arms, not the shelter. What do we do with that? I'm tossing that out there. What do you think about that?
I'm going to just put a little thing in there and then you guys can keep talking about it. But I'm just immediately picturing David being hidden in the cave, like being protected by that shelter, being given the place to hide with his men because he has a job to do. And it's not like you rest in order to be charged up to do the other thing. It's both things, that he was literally sheltered in the rock, but he was a king and he was going to overthrow a government. And so I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think we can be sheltered and protected like a knight in armor as well.
No, yeah, I certainly resonate with that tension because not all of life is summed up in the need for shelter. There is these other desires stirring in the soul. I sort of think about it this way. I've heard the phrase, right, the safest place to be is in the will of God. Sort of meaning that if you follow Jesus wherever he's going, right, he's going to take care of you. He's your good shepherd, right? But if we resist that and say, no, I'm not following you there, that's too scary, we're actually lose our shelter, right? Like, it's like he's not only our good shepherd who provides for us in his pastures, he's also the conquering king who says, hey, this is the way we're going. We're on mission. And it's like, if I want to stay within that protection of his army and like in the shelter of his army, like then I got to join him on the adventure of going with him where he's going. That's the image that came to mind there, is like sometimes being bold and adventurous is actually the shelter we need, because it is keeping in lockstep with our king, our shepherd, who says, this way is the way forward. I know what you need. Trust me. And it's scary, and it can feel like the exact opposite of a shelter, a place where we can, rest. But there's a sense in which he is our rest. Being with him is that shelter. And as he leads us on adventure, those things kind of coincide, which I kind of hear that in what you're saying, Leave, about the image of David there. It was all at once an adventure, this thrilling escape, and yet also a shelter and a place of rest. And It was commingled there.
I mean, I'm going to say personally, we're in a time of transition here, all of us, and here we are in this little island podcast, the last one of us all together possibly. And I think that idea that it's safer to watch God do what he's going to do. So, Peter, you've got your new family and launching off into the world, but that's the safest place to be because you're in that caravan of God's care and path for you. So that's the safest place for you to go. And then losing you, it feels like, Signpost Inn has, relied so much on your vision and insight along with Brandon, growing things the last few years. I have that same feeling of like, do we still have, will we have what we need? But the idea that we're still, we say stay behind Jesus is kind of our unofficial motto. We're in his caravan, his train, whether it's, I don't know, I'm picturing Lord of the Rings. We've got them all like running across the craggy, whatever.
Yeah.
They've got Aragorn and stuff on their side. So they're in the right place. I guess that's kind of what it is. The Lord is our shelter. So we're staying behind Jesus. We're in the right place. And with whatever shelter it is we need for the adventure.
Yeah. I mean, I think I noticed that there's like, I think, Peter, you just said sort of like long desires of the soul. And I'm like noticing that there's desire for significance, right? Like I want to know that I'm important or valuable. Desire for safety. I want to know that it's okay to be me, that I'm safe, that in some sense, the end is guaranteed. And I think we often talk about those particular desires. And what I'm seeing right now as you guys were talking is those things being answered in the character of God being revealed in Jesus. Like there's a certain sense in which there is no risk when it comes to our relationship with God through Christ. There's no real adventure there. Like the promise of God is that his approval, his care, his providential watching out for us is certain, without risk, doesn't depend on our achievement, right? We don't embark on an adventure to get it. And yet we also have this other need in our soul, which is for adventure, which is for risk. Like there's a part of significance, not so much of myself, I don't think. And maybe this is where like I'm seeing an important distinction. It's not so much my own significance in adventure. I think there's one way to do it that I think the nihilist way has to find its significance by being a successful adventurer. But like there's significance to the world. Like it matters. It's worth fighting for. I think that's the kind of significance I'm recognizing. That doing things for other people matters. That I have work to do in this world for people that is risky. I could fail. It could go bad. I don't know if I want it to be different.
I do.
Well, I wonder if the paradox of the adventurer is like that's part of the call. Like there's something in us that is part of our nature in the image of God, I think, that is risky. Like risk it. I want it to turn out well, but it's not really worth doing unless it's possible that it doesn't.
I want to tease out what you mean. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's sort of the question about love. It's the love really isn't love unless it's freely given. And so that entails a risk that it might not be. And that's worth doing. It's better. It's like free love, freely given love is a higher, we just see it. It's aesthetically better than autonomous love, and so God risked it. I'm speaking literarily here, I'm not, but there's that sense that when God created the world, that he took a risk by giving us freedom. And it went sour, but that's also the stuff of the story. That's the stuff of how now we have Christ coming and winning it back. And we're not universalists. There's failure, there's risk, there's things that happen. But that's also part of what makes it great, worth doing, exciting. And so my favorite, like, I don't need to win God's love. That's not the adventure. And I think that's where things go wrong. If the call to adventure is make yourself worth loving to God, but rather if the call to adventure in my life is go start a ministry, go become a pastor, go start a family, go have kids. Yes, the world is a scary, risky place to live in, but there's things worth doing. Step up, risk, don't play it safe. Not to achieve God's love, but out of the shelter of God's love. Now go fight. You might fail, but would you really want it to be so you can't fail? No, I want there to be a fall in my life.
Yeah. So tell me if I'm wrong here, but is risk a little bit tongue-in-cheek here based on what we know of the character of God? We always talk about that, like, who is this God who's walking with us here? It's not tongue-in-cheek? Oh, can I give an example? I'm trying to understand what you mean by risk, because for me, I think this is probably off base, but there was this Sunday school thing, and I was a kid, and I was given one Hershey's Kiss, and they said, give this Hershey's Kiss to your neighbor. They were like, here's a special one for you. Give it to your neighbor. And I was like, no, it's my Hershey's Kiss, right? I'm not going to give that away. And then the teacher comes by with the big party bag and pours the Hershey's Kisses into my lap, and then is like, give one to your neighbor. And I was like throwing them all over the circle, and it was super fun to have that overabundance. And so, I don't know. Tell me, correct me on this. Maybe it has something to do with different callings. But if I'm asked to give, to fulfill a calling, to do what I'm supposed to do. So Peter, for example, going into his church, if he felt that there was a risk here because God might not love him if he didn't do a good job, or, he might not have enough love to give to the people in the church and to his family, that would feel like a risk. But it's not a risk because he knows about the overabundant grace of God and how he's going to be literally living in the means of grace as his daily work. And so in that case, he can give it away. There's no fear. But for me, it's like, I need to know that first, that there's a net before I jump. And I'm assuming with the Kierkegaard background, Brandon, you're just kind of saying, jump into the void, and that's better. Tell me more about this.
Oh, you had to bring up Kierkegaard, which really tempts me not to make myself clear. I'm not going to follow that temptation.
Do you want to start talking under a pseudonym right now for the rest of the episode? It's not Brandon anymore. Kierkegaard.
Well, I do think that you're right, that there's no risk with God. And I think that's why I launched into this direction from what you were saying, Peter, with the idea of shelter, that there is a guaranteed acceptance, approval, love, forgiveness. God in Christ doesn't leave it up to us as to whether or not he loves us, and he's good. So there is never a risk in our relationship with God, which I like that. What really made me think it was the image, right, that you used, even Peter, you used. It's like knight in armor or in the army of God. Like, the victory of the overall war is certain. Just like when you're reading Lord of the Rings, everybody knows from the page one that the ring is going to get destroyed and they're going to win. We know that's going to happen. It's a novel. That's how they work. But there is true loss throughout the novel. There is true things that are regrettable, things that are not good, things that we would rather not have happened, right? I mean, Gandalf dies. And yes, we know he comes back or whatever, whether he actually dies or not, I don't know. But there are things that we don't. And there's real risk. They could fail. They really could fail. And I think that's what I'm talking about. It's not this, it's risk in a certain domain. Maybe it's temporary risk. Maybe it's not the war. We know how the story ends. But there is no guarantee. And I mean, gosh, this is going to turn serious. Let's have a fun, light episode and let's turn it serious. When we started Signpost Inn, there's still real risk that it will fail and we won't survive and I'll have to get a different job and won't be able to make them ends meet. There's real risk that Peter will not succeed as a pastor. Sorry, I don't mean to bring that up, but that's a real risk, and it's terrifying then to take the job because it may go bad. Now, we believe that should either of those happen, God is at work and there will be good brought from it because he loves us, and that's never a question. He's providentially caring for us. But that doesn't mean that my endeavor is going to succeed. And what I'm trying to point out is, I think, one, the shelter safety net that God provides us of eternity and his goodwill towards us, and that he will bring good out of evil, makes it possible for me to take the risks, but doesn't reduce that they are real risks. And I don't think I would want it to be different. I think maybe I'm just speaking from my own angle, but like part of what I like about doing this ministry is it's a real risk. And I get up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I got stuff to do. Again, I don't feel like I'm risking God's love. I don't feel like I'm risking God's goodwill for my life. But it is a fun adventure because there's real risk.
Yeah. The way that I'm relating to this on my end is that that notion of like, I'm not sure I'd want it to be differently. I hate discomfort. I hate risk, but it also, I feel alive. I feel like I'm in the midst of things when there's, uncertainty and a bit of fear and risk, which, like, I don't know. So recently I've had a few, not sleepless nights, but nights where I just lay down and then my brain is just alive with all the different questions about the future, reflections, and, not necessarily just an anxious thing, but it's just full of thoughts and stuff. And I just feel stirred up and like energized. And and sometimes that takes on like an anxious, side to it that's not very fun. But the image that's been coming up is just like, all right, or not the image, but I've been remembering that like I've felt this way in the past. Like I can look back at significant transitions, moving here to Signpost Inn with you guys 3.5 years ago. It's just like, wow, what are we doing? What's going to happen? And just all these questions, the risk, and it just felt exhilarating, terrifying. And I'm able to look back at that and say, okay, I've felt this way. And what has happened? Has God been faithful? Yeah, he absolutely has. Has there been challenges, real hardship? Like, yeah, it's been real hard. Have I handled everything well? No. And there's been like real hurt and pain and different things along the way. But I think the encouragement in experiencing this risky feeling, this I'm on the edge of my seat, like what's going to happen, is that is not all bad. Like that's just, there's this anticipation of the fear and excitement. And like, yeah, I feel like I've been able to recently consent to the excitement of it and say, man, I bet you that I'm going to look back at this season and be like, I remember these sleepless nights. I remember like lying awake, just unable to sleep because of how much was going on in life. And that I don't love being in the midst of that, but it's sort of the type of thing where I'm in the middle of the story and I don't know everything that's going on. That's the way I'm sort of relating to what you're saying, Brandon, when you say, I'm not sure I want life to be different, is that I don't know, I can experience a bit of how uncertainty is exciting. There's like founded on the bedrock of God's love and faithfulness. There is real variables. There's real uncertainty, but it's also, I know enough about who's leading that there's excitement for navigating what's ahead. So I don't know. It is kind of this weird tension of the certainty of God's love for me and the uncertainty of what's going to come. And yeah, I don't know.
I think I'm hearing something amazing here. This is definitely a personality thing for me. But I think I don't often ask myself, how do I feel about this? I ask, how should I feel about this? And I think that my response to uncertainty, Brandon and I have had plenty of that over the years, lots of moves and changes and things.
Got married to a Kierkegaardian guy, so hey,
I
go
did
ahead.
it. At least you let me love you. That's the big difference between you and Kierkegaard. But yeah, I think that in order to make it through scary things or to know that I'm doing the right thing or whatever, I think that I don't a whole lot ask, how do I feel about this? What's the perspective? Because, risk assumes that you don't have a God's eye view on the story. Because for God, there's no risk. God knows the story. And I think call myself a Christian nihilist sometimes, or jokingly a fatalist, and say, God knows the story. It's all written. I don't have to fear. And so it's like, oh, I don't fear. Oh, I don't have feelings of risk because the story's been written. Yada yada. But that's it's faithful. It's a true perspective. But I think I want to honor here for a second the fact that you guys would say, no, here's how I feel in the midst of the battle, though. And I think I don't tend to allow that to be part of the story. But I suppose if the Lord says, be not afraid every time he appears, he is going to recognize that it's not the end of the world if somebody is afraid.
Or he's saying, be not afraid because they are afraid.
I think, right. Yeah.
Well, I think this is something, another place this is coming from for me is sort of something that I've been thinking about lately. I've noticed, it came out in a conversation I had in a spiritual context, but and it's been a recurring theme. This has been coming up over and over and over for me. But the question was, the statement was made, I'm not afraid, or I shouldn't be afraid. I think that was actually, I think, more the way it was phrased, Lee. It was like, it wasn't you, but I shouldn't be afraid because I know that God is in control. And what occurred to me was, sure, knowing and believing that God is in control is a good thing. But that doesn't mean that we like the way he's controlling things. So, for parents, the quickest way to this one is to say, we know we're supposed to trust God with our children and their futures, but because God is in control. But what if the story that God tells with our children includes a lot of pain for them? What if the story that they with God tell with their lives is not something we want for them? Well, I still believe that is part of God's providential control, his plan. Like, he's involved in all of that. But that doesn't change the fact that I like the way it's going. And I think this is a related thing, right? It's like just the recognition that trusting that God is providentially loving, caring for me doesn't mean I like what he gives me. And that might be scary, and that might be painful. There might be massive suffering. And so there's still risk in trusting God. It's not risking, again, I want to make that distinction. I'm not risking my relationship with God. Like, I don't think it's ever possible for God to stop loving me, liking me, wanting what's best for me. I think the risk is that what God wants for me might include a lot of pain. And I might mess things up and bring a lot of pain, and God may not stop me. And I still like the risk if you want to bring it into question of like, is there risk with God? Then the risk, this is the Kierkegaard moment, the leap of faith is to trust that God is still God, still Jesus, even when I screw things up, or when bad things happen, or when really bad things happen. And I guess there's that side of it, like there's the scary side, but the side that I'm kind of interested in is I don't know, if there's a call to arms there's a call to step up and do something exciting. I get to be the Hobbit being asked to carry the ring. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm scared as heck if that call comes to me, but at the same time, I'm kind of excited by that. And that call, I think, grows me.
You're using Lord of the Rings imagery, but I'm thinking of Shasta and the Horse and His Boy, and he has that moment with Aslan. It's been a while since I read it, but like towards the end of the book, where he's finally talking to Az, and he's like, "Where were you?" And he's like, "Do you remember the beast that chased you that night? That night you were terrified and fleeing, and it clawed your horse and stuff." And it's like, that was actually me. Like I was, like, hurting you. I was pushing you to where you absolutely needed to be for your own good, for the good of the kid, like for the divine providential plan. And Shasta was like, "What?" Like these were the most terrifying, most, like I was not in control. There was pain, there was just confusion. And that was, in the story, that was Aslan, the God figure, moving things for his good. And it was directly the most fearful times were the points where it was like, I was actually right there, directly leading and guiding you. And I don't
And
know.
that cuts against that cuts against the simplistic therapeutic model that we're supposed to make you feel better. That faith makes you feel better. I know it doesn't. Like sometimes it does. And there's a peace that surpasses understanding that I think is available to us. But this is sometimes the spiritual life, God really wants you to be terrified. I don't think of him. Like, not ultimately of him. Maybe, maybe temporarily, if we're dealing with just, like, this is so far beyond dealing with sin in your life. Like, sure, be terrified if you're sinful. Yeah, and then go ask for forgiveness. Yes, but we're talking more about, like, in your growing relationship with God and in you doing the call to serve others that God has given you. I think we do each other a disservice sometimes when we remove the fear, when we remove, again, not of God, but of like, I'm in a dark place and I've got stuff there's risky things happening. That's where God is deepening your trust.
Those moments scare me so much, though. I think I'm afraid of feelings. I'm putting this together here. When I'm afraid, and I'm loving that, Peter. I love that we've brought up Lewis and Tolkien again. But when I'm afraid, I feel faithless. I condemn myself, like fear and strong feelings of, not purposelessness, but like not knowing what I should definitely do next. I like marching orders. I like deadlines. And if I'm not sure, then it's like, oh, maybe there's no God. Like, I don't know if I go quite that far, but sometimes almost there. But I feel faithless. I feel guilty. So for me, with bad feels comes guilt. So I'm picturing Shasta on his horse and Erebus on hers, and they're, far apart from each other. And both of them are terrified and running, and even running away. I mean, if you think of it that way, like they're trying to avoid this beast, and Aslan is on both sides of them, pushing them together. And I'm thinking of them being on their horses and feeling guilty for feeling bad because they have a purpose or something. And honestly, if you think of it that way, it becomes a little absurd. Here I'm in the hardest things that are not just like physical danger or like obvious huge financial strain or something like that, but just the daily scary things, uncertainties, not having marching orders, and feeling. I think it's interesting that I wonder, Brandon, if in spiritual direction you come across this where there's unnecessary guilt that comes with the fears and sufferings and the low points, but guilt in feeling bad. Is that something you come up with?
Do you mean, do I talk to human beings?
Stay more.
Do you mean that there's human beings that are afraid that they're doing it wrong? Like, yeah, that's I think that's kind of where this is going, is like, fundamentally, one of our breaks is, what's the peace that surpasses all understanding? Well, in the context, the peace that surpasses all understanding is that the Lord is near. In Philippians, that's what that passage turns on the phrase, the Lord is near. Well, why is it peace that surpasses understanding? Well, because even with the Lord near, well, sometimes the Lord near isn't always comfort in the traditional therapeutic sense. Like, my child is going off the rails. My kid is in a war zone. My wife does not, but my wife has a mental illness that I can't solve. My mother is dying. Like, the Lord is near. Great. He's not stopping those things. I feel guilty because I should be trusting God and not being afraid. My trust of God means I shouldn't be angry. My trust of God means that I should be able to just sail through this situation happy and telling people how wonderful God's providence is. And it's like, no, that's one of the BS that we cut through.
Yes.
That's crap. No. And I think you're right. You don't need to feel guilty for being afraid or angry when those things are happening. At the same time, in some sense, I don't really care about your feelings. No offense. Like, it's not, your feelings aren't the issue that I'm trying to fix here. Like, they're good. It's important to take them into account and give you freedom to feel them. Release the shame and guilt that surrounds feeling those things. But faith is not a feeling. Faith is moving forward. My kid terrible things are happening to my child and I don't know what to do about it. Faith is moving forward, loving them anyway. It's not feeling differently. It's that when they call, you take their call and talk to them. And you feel all that horror in your mind. What am I going to say? Am I going to do it wrong? Have I done it wrong for the last however many years? You feel it all and you talk to them anyway. That's faith. You get up the next morning and you go to work. You take a call to become a pastor in another state. You take the risk to get married, to have the child. That's, I think, the things, right? And how you feel about it is important, but not the point. And feeling afraid is not something you should feel guilty of. That you need to feel guilty about. By the way, I also think there's a whole meta level there, which is like sometimes the guilt over the feeling is part of what God's doing. So it's also like, okay, let's see what God does with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this is really all tying together for an unscripted episode.
We should do this more often.
Because I do feel like what gets me out of the paralysis to actually to keep moving forward is that shelter that, to me, it's the idea of like interior freedom. The book of Jacques Philippe talks about this inner space where we're truly free. Nothing can hinder us because it's essentially this: God is for you. That's the core reality of life. You are a beloved child of God and nothing can ever take that from you, right? You're secure. That's a whole journey in its own right. Having that place of shelter, I don't know that it's like possible to take the steps of faith and everything without that respite, that relationship with God that says, I know He's for me. I know He's for me. He has, he has proved it. And I see it. Jesus on the cross, He is for me, and so I must move forward. I can. And that doesn't always mean warm, fuzzy feelings and it's all easy, but it seems almost like a prerequisite. I'm not sure if that's the exact relationship between the two, but it's like that shelter is sort of that launch pad, that place from which we can step out in adventure and go, all right, keep on leading.
Yeah, I would just nuance that by saying, if we back out of life and we analyze this, then if we use our rational analysis, that is correct. Like, the image is, I have a fortress from which I can sally forth and to which I can return. I have a God who goes forth with me, so it's never really, so He is always fighting for me, and so there's always security. And that experience of God, that experiential knowledge of God, is the platform and the necessary prerequisite before I have the courage to act. That's where I gain the courage to act. But I think, I think that the lived experience of that, the way it actually kind of plays out, is that my sense that God is that fortress grows. It's easy to sort of get it into our heads that we have to God, we have to believe that God is our fortress and experience God as our fortress and then move forward. And it's a step-by-step process. One follows the other. When in actual reality, one learns that God is one's fortress by taking leaps of faith that don't feel like God is our fortress. And you get a little more experience, and sometimes you don't. And it's okay. Like he's developing that with you. And it's not a linear process. And it's also important, I think, to recognize that part of the instinct here is that it's also not always about, there's a lot of things I don't like about this language, but it's not always about you. Like, the leaps of faith are sometimes for the sake of your children or other people or God's plan for the world. I mean, like, there's some things here that are just, the main adventure is not your own moral personal development. Sometimes the main adventure is good for others. And God works to your own personal moral development along the way. But I think we kind of slip into that trap too of the achievement I'm trying to win, which I think cuts often back to feelings, are my feelings of significance, security, faith, etc. And sometimes it's like, nope. God's trying to win a marriage to happen. God's trying to win a child to be born. God's trying to, like, I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it helps with the pressure to feel ready. I think that some of that pressure is relieved if you might not be doing it, whatever it is that you feel called to, because it's right for you, because it's definitely the right thing for you, because it's going to strengthen your faith, because it's going to whatever. You might not feel ready. You might just need to do it. If that's the pull that you're feeling. Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of, contexts we know about where it's like the call is to do something for someone else now.
Yeah.
And we know, I think we can see as readers of someone else's story how it's got to be good for a person, right? Like, we can see the personal moral development that happened to Frodo or to Shasta. But in a certain sense, for their personal moral development, it has to not be about their personal moral development, right? Or even for their growth in confidence in God's goodness and his character, it has to be not about their growth in confidence in God's goodness and character. Like, we can see it. And I think that's the hard part, is like, from the inside of the person now, if I am Frodo or I'm Shasta or whoever, the call is risk it all. Abandon your own personal moral good that you feel like you should be getting here and just do the thing that's good for somebody else. Do the thing you know you have to do now. And there's a certain sense in which it's almost dangerous to say to that person, trust God, it's going to be for your good too. Although that's true and that's right, but in the moment at that particular time, it may actually be damaging to say to that person that. You got to let them feel the risk. You got to let them feel the call, and they've got to jump forward. They've got to jump. Leave is, if you're watching the video, you're seeing a very interesting, what's the thought you have, Lee?
Well, you love those leaps.
I hate those leaps.
Yeah, but you, okay, so we've been talking a lot about in your spiritual direction practice, in the workshops and the intensives that we're rolling out, and feel like they really address this, which is, we don't have to keep you away from the cliff's edge. Please stay away from the literal cliff's edge, everybody, but the spiritual cliff's edge, the scary adventure moment in life, and even the doubt moment and all these things. This is Kierkegaardian leap of faith thing. And Brandon's been talking a lot about letting that edge still exist and not trying to solve the fear, the fear of heights, right? You're not trying to say, look, you can be a Christian, but don't worry, you don't have to be afraid of these heights. Instead, it's like, look, you have this fear of heights. You have this place where things feel uncertain. Let's stand there for a minute and then see what happens next. And I like the way we're saying it with the workshops is learning to trust God, right? if you're afraid to trust God for a million reasons. I don't know that all of us want to admit that. That's what it is allowing the uncomfortable moment to just sit without trying to solve the feeling, because it's okay to have a bad feeling, because that doesn't mean I don't have faith.
Yeah.
And I think, would we admit that we don't trust God? Doesn't that mean that we're bad? And if we have bad feelings, we must be bad. But to stand with someone on the cliff's edge and say, okay, again, the metaphorical cliff's edge, and say, go ahead and leap into the loving arms of God, who is going to, I don't know exactly.
Well, that's the
Yeah, I don't
problem.
know. I think that's the point.
No, that's exactly the problem. This is where if we theologize it, which is good to do, we can do that. We can talk about it. Like, we can answer the question, go ahead and jump because God is going to fill in the blank. But the insight is that the God is going to answer is going to be a general answer. It's going to be God is going to still care for you. God is going to provide for you in the eternity. God is going to, it's not going to be a specific, go ahead and take the risk with your children because God is going to guarantee that your children are healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's it, right? But in actual life, we can't theologize it. It's not a cliff if there's a God is going to answer. It's not a risk. It's not a leap of faith. It's not a trust. And then to admit that I don't trust God is to admit that I'm a human being who's fallen. Like, hey, you don't want to jump off this cliff. You're afraid. You don't like what God might do. Yep. I mean, I'm standing with you on the cliff, not as the person who's going to push you over, but as the person who's just like, well, I got my own cliffs and I'm terrified too. And I don't trust Jesus. I'm going to just be honest. I don't. There's things I won't give up. There's things I won't do. There's places where I backed down. There's regrets I have. It's like the advice we give young people. Well, at least I think we both do, but the biggest regrets I have in my life are places where I've acted from a place of fear, where I've let the fear decide what I'm going to do. But I have those. You're not alone. And so I think, like, we walk with people spiritually and they come to a cliff's edge that God is saying, hey, trust me with this. And I go, do you want to jump? And they go, no. I was like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's fine. Let's wander back down a little bit. Come back later. Do you want to jump now? Hell no. Okay, that's fine. I'm with you. I mean, it's sin. It is sin not to trust God. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you choose not to leap off the cliffs that God asks you to leap off of, you're sinning. You're not trusting Jesus. But that's the whole point. Like, grace is kind and gentle and patient and loving. And wait, what's the chapter on love, right? It's long suffering. It has no accounts. And then God is super wise and providential. So he leads you back to that cliff's edge until you do jump. And then you're faithful. And he goes, and then everybody celebrates. All of heaven celebrates, and all the sin is irrelevant. It's forgiven. You jumped. And if you never do jump, it's still ultimately irrelevant. It's not like God's going to be like, well, you didn't take that leap. Irrelevant to God's love. It's not irrelevant to your life. That's my point.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the bigger point is that's actually kind of what makes life fun and worth living.
Yeah.
I'm living in my own wonderful adventure story.
Do you guys ever listen to the song? I think it might just be called Dive or Diving In by Stephen Curtis Chapman. You know that one? I think it's one that I grew up listening to. Like, it was just played around the house, and its lyrics always have sort of had this haunting invitation. The imagery is the guy standing at the banks of a mighty rushing river, and the invitation is to dive in and not look back, sort of thing. The call to trust and stuff. But it's just like horrifying. Like as a kid, and just still now, like it's this feeling of like, whether it's a cliff or the dive into the currents that are going on, it's like, it's scary. And so I don't know, I might have to link that song or something, but that's a really, sometimes music and stuff can capture just the expressions and feelings. And for me, that song does it, of just that, this tension, this Lord, like, I know if you called me to jump into the currents of your grace, there's no way I could really be smashed against the rocks and destroyed and perish. But I'm terrified. I don't like, I'm out of control. Once I dive in, I'm along for the ride. And like, it's exciting, exhilarating, and terrifying. And I want to trust, but I'm on the bank, like trying to tell myself to jump in and trying to, just that whole experience. Yeah. And I resonate with what you said, Brandon, about the points that I regret in my life are when I've come to such a moment and when I have backed down, when I have said that I'm too scared. I'm too scared. I choose perceived safety over, following God's call. And there's real risk there, real regrets. Like that's, I don't know. So I just resonate with that as well. Yeah. That's such that's the experience of life. I think not every day presents such a stark, choice or anything, but man, you look back over the milestones of life and they often include a moment such as that, where there's a big decision, you're faced with the core. Are you gonna leap or not? And it's like, I believe, help my unbelief. Push me.
Yep.
I love how you're connecting those moments to very specific moments, right? It's not, will you jump in general? It's like Peter's saying, he can look back to specific moments in his life, and all of us have been at those moments. And the funny thing is, just as practical as those, like, will I be where I'm called to be? Like right now, our move has been slowed down. And so we are looking at being in Canyon, just Brandon and me, a little bit longer. And for me, I'm going to have to dive. I'm going to have to give in, because that wasn't my plan. But I'm going to have to dive Peter and Rachel into family life and into ministry. But I feel the same anxiety moment and being asked to dive into that river, allowing the Lord to love me. I love our practice of communion, where you're at the rail and, one option, it's not required, but one option is that you receive the host on your tongue. And so at churches where that's the common practice, you see all these people in their Sunday clothes opening their mouths like little baby birds and allowing the Lord to love them and having the host placed on their tongues. And I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Like you were saying, Peter, about for you, how this is for you. And that to me is one of those cliff's edge. Like that, at that moment, it's, will I let you love me? Will I let you love me? And that's a dive too. It is a specific moment. It's not just theological, but it's as much of it feels like a risk in the moment from my perspective. But yeah, but he does. Yeah.
Man. Well, Signpost Inn Unscripted turned into adventure and shelter, or something around. There's a working title there. God is our shelter, adventure and risk, or something. That's really
a bunch of other questions lined out just in case we needed them, but we just so let's listeners, the sad reality is that this is not only Peter's last episode with us, it's like officially his last day in the office, on the job, whatever we want to call it. So we are saying goodbye to Peter in multiple ways today, and to Rachel and to Ben. Now we have a few more weeks before they officially move, but they are done with their time at Signpost Inn. Peter, thank you for being a part of this. And Rachel, I know you'll listen too. Thank you, Rachel, for being a part of our ministry as well. You both have been very important parts of what we've been doing over the last couple of years and have built many things. So your DNA will be part of the ministry for years and years to come. And we're grateful for that. Grateful for you guys. Also grateful that the people in Maryland to get such a good pastor and such a good family. They're going to be blessed by you guys. It's really good. So yeah, thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thank you guys. And consistency with the image we've used today, I feel like the joy of being here has been sort of this partnership where we're standing at the cliff's edge together and we're like, all right, let's jump. like let's push me and then I'll push you. Wait, just this the mutual encouragement to just keep trusting God and stay behind Jesus. And it's the 3.5 years of practicing that and doing that together has built just such a, I feel so blessed. It's been so formative and really wonderful. I want to continue to do this type of work and wherever God leads me. And so it's just been such a blessing to be here with you guys. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Listeners, we want to encourage you to get on our website and check out all the events that we have. Our calendar has filled up with lots of great things. We have a Learning to Trust God workshop that happens every month, different times, different nights. Hopefully one will work for you. They are designed to start asking some of the questions that we talked about today. What is it that, what are you afraid to let go of? What are you afraid to let God have? And then the beginning of a practice, a simple prayer, a simple practice for how to overcome that. Take that leap of faith, if you will, and really let God have that part. So the workshops are that way. They're an hour long. They're really helpful. The community aspect of hearing that other people are with you is really nice, to know that you're not the only one asking these questions or having these struggles. And then starting in October, we have our first intensive beginning, meets Tuesday nights throughout October, which really dives in deep to this. It's called an intensive for a reason. We will walk you through from start to finish what are those core questions that your soul is asking that you're maybe afraid to let God answer for you. Why are you afraid to let God answer those questions? How do you overcome that fear? And that last question is the real focus of the intensives, so that when you walk away and are done with the 4 weeks, you have a plan and a real sense of how to continue deepening that relationship with God that moves past the initial fears. So really powerful stuff. Check them all out on our website. We have another intensive, same one, that'll happen in February. So if you can't make the October one work, you could maybe make the February one work. We've got several people signed up for the first one in October. We still have some room, of course. We'd love to have you there. We've got a couple people signed up for the February one. The community aspect there is also going to be really powerful, and even more, we intend to not only talk, but also let you have friends, help you meet other people who are in the same space. So I think you'll find that really encouraging. And I know this is a lot of information, and most people have probably turned off the podcast by now, but I do want to throw out, if you're a spiritual director, we have continuing education classes this fall that we're really excited about. One is from a previous podcast guest. I've got Alan Johnson on deck. He's going to be teaching a class based on the podcast that he gave with us on repentance and the questions your soul asks and how to notice those with your directees and be able to answer and handle questions that are different than your own. And how does that connect with repentance and dependence? It's titled Repentance and Dependence. And then I'm doing one in December. It's on Kierkegaard. It's literally called The Leap of Faith. And it's all about helping our directees stand on the cliff's edge and jump. And what does that look like? It's a unique take, I think, on what we're doing in the spiritual direction room. How do we do something that can be really scary in a way that is compassionate and like Jesus does? So anyway, check it all out, signpostinn.org/events. We'd love to have you at any one of our things. And we especially appreciate you spending time with us. Send us a note, podcast@signpostinn.org. And may the grace of Christ go with you wherever the road takes you.
Amen.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is a production of Signpost Inn Ministries, a nonprofit Christian ministry dedicated to strengthening people's relationship with Jesus and walking with them compassionately on their life's journey. We offer spiritual direction, retreats, and lots of other resources like this podcast. Please visit us at signpostinn.org to learn more. We especially want to thank our generous donors who support our work and keep this podcast going. If you've benefited from something you've heard, please consider supporting us by making a tax-deductible gift at signpostinn.org/donate. We also want to thank Rex Daugherty for creating the original theme music for this podcast. You can check out more of his work at his website, and you can find all the links in our show notes.